Okay, this is my 10-hour field experience and reflection. Um, so I went to Goddard Eisenhower Middle School for 7th and 8th grade last week, last Thursday and last Friday morning. I spent about 5 hours each day spending time with the special ed kids in different environments, and different settings, and all that kind of stuff. I'll get into that the further I get into this, but I spent some quality time with them. I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun. So, without further ado, let's get into this. The first thing that's asked is the particular types of special needs learners I worked with. I worked with quite a variety of them, but the most notable ones that I spent the most time with were autism, Down syndrome, ADHD, and a kid who was he was actually not from this country. He's from Mexico. He didn't speak the language very well, so they had him in special ed classes to try and get him to learn our language better. They had a translator there for him actually, and she would translate so he could actually understand what was going on. Um, they actually accommodated really well to his thing. I don't know his problem because for his textbooks they actually had Spanish copies for him so he could read them, which is pretty crazy to think that they actually spent the money and actually, you know, wanted this kid to learn that much that they actually went out of their way and bought him a Spanish copy specifically for him. So I thought that was super nice of the school to do. I thought that was super sweet. Like his family didn't pay for this. This was 110% funded by the school. I'm sure with more and more immigrants coming from Spanish-speaking countries coming to America, having a Spanish copy of a textbook is probably a good idea for the long-term future. But I thought that was really interesting that they did that. So yeah. Um, Question number two is how they related the teaching and learning set or the related teaching and learning setting. Um, I went to several different classes. I went to classes specific for special ed. I went to inclusion classes where they were included with regular ed students. I went to like a reading lab class. I went to a math lab class. It was really interesting to see all the different ways that they incorporate them into classes. I spent a lot of time in the reading lab and math lab classrooms. I really liked those. They were pretty nice. They had smaller classes. It was probably, I think the smallest one was 4 students, and the biggest one was probably 11. So it was very small class sizes, so they could have a lot of time with the teacher, so they could learn more. But it was set up in a way that the teacher would teach the lesson very briefly, and then rather than bombarding them with information, she preferred to walk around the classroom and offer help that way instead. So each student had their own time to ask questions and get their work checked by the teacher to make sure it was going good, and they weren't getting bored out of their mind with notes and all that kind of stuff. So it was really nice to see that the teacher accommodated their needs in that way because I know in the past I've taken math classes before and I've had special ed students in there and they just lose focus so fast and I feel bad for them because it's very hard for them to learn in just a normal classroom. So to see a teacher slow down and discuss what's going on for the student to help the student learn better, it's incredible to see that. I also spent time in the special ed classroom itself. So this is a separate classroom specifically dedicated to the special ed students. It was very, it was nice. It was very, group oriented. I believe there was 4 tables. Each of them were set up to where there would be a para and then 3 students. So there was 4 paras altogether, and there was a teacher as well. And they only spent, I think, 2 hours of their day actually in that classroom. The rest they spent it with included classes. So it's nice to see that they're not secluding them from everyone else, but they still give them the time they need with each other to learn, in their own specific ways. But the way it was set up is there was 3 chairs and then 1 chair for the instructor, the para, whoever, and that instructor would help the students out. So if they had any questions or they couldn't read something or they were just struggling in general, the teacher was there to help them. But they weren't there to just hand them the answers. There was one student I can think of notably. His name was Brody, I believe, and he had Down syndrome. And he was a good kid. He just he kept asking for the answers and asking for the answers, and the teacher was starting to get frustrated with him because he wasn't doing any of the work. He was just asking for the answers. So instead of just handing him the answers, she started showing him where to look, and eventually he started doing his work by himself, which is pretty good to see. Um, but she helped him out still. She didn't just, no, I'm not giving you anything. Like, she actually helped him out. So it was good to see that she did that. I think he kind of does that sometimes. He kind of takes advantage of them, but he's a work in progress, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that's kind of the environments I got to spend in my time shadowing. Um, and then the effectiveness of the teaching strategies used with the special needs learners. There was a lot of different ones I could think of, but I have a list of about 7 that were most notable to me. One that I thought was really big was one-on-one time and group time. Um, they knew when it was good for them to break up and go solo, and when it was good for them to be in groups. Um, Too much of one or the other is kind of bad, especially in special ed, depending on what they have, actually. There was a kid who had autism who needed one-on-one time. Excuse me. Excuse me. Who needed the one-on-one time so he could learn. But there was kids who were just they were very social, and they wanted, to be in groups. They wanted to help each other out and that kind of stuff. So the group work applied to them as well, but the one-on-one time helped them get answers from the teacher as well as student input. Another thing they did was they pulled them out of the classroom and took them to a quiet environment. It was good, especially for the kid with autism as well. Like I stated earlier, it's sometimes very hard for them to listen because they're doing other things. But they put him in a quiet environment, and they just let him work it out. The parent was there to read off the instructions and go over everything that he needed to know for the assignment, and she was there for questions as well. A couple other things that I learned. One, actually, the kid with Down syndrome that I stated previously, they actually had a lesson about math. It was specifically made for him as ILP, and it was about cars. He really, really, really loved cars. So what they did was, because his math was it was basic. It was not anything complex. It was like simple addition and subtraction. So for him to learn, what they did is they set up a parking lot, and they basically just set out a bunch of Hot Wheels for him, so he could physically move the cars and take away or add however many cars left the parking lot or came to the parking lot. It was very effective. He was very good at it. It's like they've been doing it all year, which I'm sure they have been. But he really was liking that because he just had a real passion for cars. So it was really cool to see that. A couple more things. They aren't really effectiveness in teaching. They aren't teaching strategies, but I think they're important to note. They were very, very big on positive reinforcement. So even if they were to mess up or do something wrong, it was still, hey, you're okay. It happens. You're gonna mess up, but you can just keep trying because eventually you'll get it. So they were very, very encouraging, and they didn't hang on them for their mistakes. They just said, hey, you can keep going. Like, you mess up once, that doesn't mean you're done. So it was good to see that. Another thing, like I said about the kid with Down syndrome earlier, they didn't hand them the answers. They actually made them work for the answers, and he would be like, hey, what is this? Hey, what is this? Hey, what is this? And enough of that, just the teacher was like, okay, it's time for you to start looking for the answers rather than just getting the answers, because you're not going to learn without finding out where it comes from. So they didn't hand them the answers, but they made them work for them. So it was good to see that they weren't just handing it to them. And that brings me to the final thing: your thoughts and ideas about teaching in a classroom that includes special needs children. Um, well, first off, I think what I stated earlier, positive reinforcement, I think is so important, especially with them because they can be so hard on themselves because they're just different, and I'm sure they hear it every single day that they're different. But just hearing, hey, you're doing a good job, or hey, your grades are looking really good, or hey, you tried really hard today. I really appreciate that. Things as simple as that can just change their whole world. So I think that being positive is one of the most important things you can do in a classroom. Another thing that I think was good was make them build relationships. Like building relationships, I think, is pretty important because if you have a relationship with your students, you can actually feel for what they like, what they don't like. You can, you know, get more of a personal insight in their life and understand where they're coming from if they don't like to do things a certain way or if they like to do things a certain way. I think building relationships is very, very important when it comes to any type of student, but special ed students especially. And then one last thing, just obvious, I think, is just a quiet environment. I think sometimes there's just so many distractions going on, it really distracts them, and it's very, very hard for them to focus. So something as simple as a quiet environment is just so needed in a special ed classroom. Or just a regular classroom that includes special ed kids. I think a quiet environment is essential for their learning. But yeah, that was my reflection. I had a lot of fun. I was glad I got to go. I'd never had any special ed experience before, so really seeing all that was pretty eye opening to me, and I'm glad I got to see it. But yeah, that's my reflection, and thanks for your time.